I'll get down that road. This week, it was an interesting week. It was a good week, but there was some moments this week for me that maybe you can connect with that were just like, you ever have like a really bad day or week, right? So you're gonna look at each other, yeah, right? So we had our big event this week, and we had to change locations. It was getting rainier and rainier about Monday, Tuesday, and I said we got to change something here. This isn't gonna work. And I go on our little Facebook thing. That's primarily how we put it out there. And as I am changing the location, somehow I accidentally canceled the event. Did anyone get a message this week that said, this event has been canceled? None of you did? Awesome. Yeah, one of you did, two of you did. Awesome. Right? A few of you did. So here we are. We put this, not a lot of money, but a little money into the Facebook machine to mind control us all a little better, and got this word out. We're doing this event for the community. And now it is now working against us, saying this event has been canceled. So anyone who goes to that page, sends out messages to people, posts it all over the place saying it's been canceled. So then we have to scramble and try to figure it out going through. And it's just I'm sitting there going, man, we just blew this thing up, right? We put all this time and energy and money into this, and there's going to be like 10 people who are going to show up. We're going to have jugglers there, and like, they got to do their show. This is going to be super awkward, and we get in the chin on the, anyway, so I'm sitting there, that's not too bad. That's not too rough. Then later this week, I'm sitting at a intersection over by where I live called Five Corners. We've been over in that way. It is a mess of intersection, and my vehicle won't go. Stops, home, right? Shut it off, restart, and I'm the first car in the intersection, right? Anyone else that should, and I'm blocking the whole thing. And that light there is like 20 years long. It just, so the guy behind me is like right on my bumper, which is helping, he's helping the whole situation. He's kind of pushing me along, like, yeah, buddy, what are you gonna do? And it gets going, we get it there, it's acting up. Next day, I'm working at a client in my little sharpening business, and it won't start. Getting transmission lights, have to get it towed. Get it pulled into the, that takes forever. I'm sitting there, I'm just like, this week is just falling apart. It's just like little thing after little thing. And I had to kind of reset and go, you know what? These things are hard. You know what? No one that immediate to me that I know is dying or passing. There's been seasons where that's not always true. My health is fairly decent. There's been seasons where that's not true, right? It's a little perspective resetting. Like this could be, this is frustrating. This is hard. This is going to cause money and confusion. And it's hard, But the real things that matter are held together. But there's been seasons where those aren't true. And maybe you're in a season where things have been going well. Maybe your transmission didn't go on your work truck this week, or maybe it did. But there's something about life that goes beyond heart pumping, breath in, breath out. It goes in this place of experiencing life and experiencing a wholeness, experiencing a hope and a hopefully like a joy, looking forward to the days. But there's these things that just keep coming and coming and coming, and they can be little and they can be big. I flip on the news, man, and I see the issues that are going on around the world. There are folks right now in the millions around the world who would love to have my bad day, right? But there's also something so interesting about the human experience where we experience hardship after hardship after hardship, but there's something in us that goes, I can turn this around. There's something in us that goes, I can better this situation. There's something that fights to make the world more whole. I personally believe that desire to do that, it points to something bigger, right? In the same way that I have desire for thirst, right? I need water. There's water to meet that. I have hunger. There's food to meet that hunger. If there's this desire in me to see the world be more whole, to see my life be more whole, it leads me to believe that there is something out there to actually accomplish that task. I wouldn't have that. You wouldn't have that. The world wouldn't have that desire to do things better and make the world a better place. There wasn't something there to bring that into its wholeness. And as we look at this statement that we're going to read today about Jesus, he is telling us that he is a key part of making this world a better place, of bringing all things new. That the overwhelming brokenness that we can experience, but we still hold on to hope somehow. It's still in there. He's saying, yes, because that's me calling you, pulling you into this place. If you have a Bible with you, just open up to John chapter 11. If you don't, that's fine. You can just kind of follow along. I'm going to kind of read a little story here, a little account from Scriptures, a narrative. But we are in this section of Scripture, chapter 11, and Jesus is he's doing his ministry, and he's meeting over here, and everybody kind of wants Jesus to be in their space, right? So he's very busy, he's very kind of moving around, and he has these friends who are very close to him who come to him and say, our friend is dying. Our friend is dying, and we just know if you were to come, Jesus, we've seen you perform miracles. Please come and see our friend, our family member. He is dying, and Jesus, in his wisdom and in his mystery, says, I'll be there when I get there. Let's paraphrase. And we pick up on verse 17 in chapter 11. It says this. So when Jesus came, he's coming to this request to see their sick relative here. He says, so when Jesus came, he found out that he had already been in the tomb for 4 days. Now Bethany was near Jerusalem, about 2 miles away, and many of the Jews had joined the woman around Martha and Mary to comfort them concerning their brother. Right? So they're mourning. Then Martha, as soon as she heard that Jesus was coming, went and met him, but Mary was sitting in the house. Now Martha said to Jesus, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. But even now I know whatever you ask of God, God will give you. So Martha, she it's so interesting here. She expresses her pain. She expresses, she's not going, oh, my transmission went, or everything's happy, right? This fake kind of thing. She said, no, this is terrible. My brother has died. This is one of those real ones, right? Real painful experiences. If you had been here, but she goes, but even now, I know you could do something. Even now, there's some hope. Those things are in there. Jesus said to her, your brother will rise again. Martha said to him, I know that he will rise again in the resurrection at the last day. Right? So in the Jews and in us today, we're going to talk about this a little bit. We're waiting this time when there's going to be a resurrection, when all of those that are in Christ, we talked about last week, those in Christ will be resurrected and be with God. And there's this hope. Right? And in our culture today, we kind of talk about this, and it's kind of a thing, your resurrection. But if you were in a place where that day was like every day, right? You're sustained, you're living, we talk about paycheck to paycheck. There's a lot of people today that live dollar to dollar. Right? Life is hard. This time I think life would be even harder. This idea of resurrection was a deep hope that there was going to be a day that all things would be made new. All things were going to be set right. And the pain and the brokenness of the world would be eliminated. No more tears. No more brokenness. And so she says, yeah, I know. I'm holding on to that hope that someday you will be resurrected. But Jesus said to her, I am the resurrection and the life. He who believes in me, though he may die, he shall live. And whoever lives and believes in me shall never die. Do you believe this? She said to him, Yes, Lord, I believe it. You are the Christ, the Son of God, who has come into the world. It's interesting, as Jesus says this statement, he's connecting a theological dot that maybe we don't quite see right away. You say that hope that you're looking for, this coming hope, it's actually here and it's now. And it's in Jesus in a way that it is him. He is the one that is going to bring about this resurrection, this hope, this life. And not just life of a beating heart and breath, but life that is joyful, that is hopeful, that is exciting, that is abundant. And if you read the rest of the story, you can read it later. Jesus does eventually get to where Lazarus is, and he calls him out of the tomb, and he is resurrected. Right? He is resurrected. And Jesus is not only making a claim that he is this resurrection in his life, but he's expressing it in power. Right? It's one thing for someone to say, like, hey, all that things that you're hoping for the world to be made right, that deep angst that's in all people, I am going to solve that someday. Right? It's one thing to say that, but then to say it and then demonstrate it in power. So as Lazarus comes forward, he's confirming these words. In the faith of Christianity, the biggest piece of the whole story is the resurrection of Jesus. Because not only does Jesus say, I am the resurrection of life, not only does he bring Lazarus up, but then he himself experiences death and then is resurrected. As journeying with Jesus, as being a follower of God, this book, this one here is a little thinner, because the pages are so paper thin, but it's a pretty big book. There's a lot of things going on. If you say, oh, I'm a follower of Jesus, I love Jesus, I'm trying to model my life after his way and follow after him, and someone goes, well, hey, have you heard the story of Joseph? And you go, I don't know that one. Right? One, good story to know, helps set up the story of God. But you'll get through. Right? You'll make it by. Right? Oh, you might someone go, oh, well, you know about this, this king, or this, there's this really cool lady in the Old Testament that takes a tent peg and kills this guy, and you're like, I haven't heard that one. And you're like, oh, you should, it's really great. Right? If you didn't hear that story, you'll make it through. But the resurrection story of Jesus, if you're like, I love Jesus, I'm thinking about Jesus, and you haven't kind of wrestled with that idea, you're missing a big piece. You're missing a big, big piece. It's interesting that the New Testament really revolves around this idea of Jesus came, he lived, he did his ministry, he did miracles, he preached in this way that empowered the marginalized and pulled everyone up. And then he died, and then he resurrected. And then after that, they're kind of playing this out. That this man, he wasn't like us, he wasn't like you, he wasn't like me. There was something about him. He resurrected from the dead. Is that door open? Can you close that door, please? Now, all of Christianity hinges on this point that Jesus was resurrected. It really does. If the scriptures tell us in a number of places that if Jesus was not resurrected and there was not a coming resurrection, then you know what? This is all, you're wasting your time. It would be better for you to just go and live however you want and enjoy whatever you want, because there's no coming hope. This is it. And all of this is just a made-up hope. But there's a few things I would like to draw our attention to. And I have some notes here. I'm going to kind of not flip to my page. I might have to a little bit, because I just want to express this in a way that's a little more natural. There is a fairly logical case for the resurrection of Christ. Right? It is not just a faith jump. Right? There's faith involved in it. There's faith of God working in the world in there, that things that can't always be proven, but there are some things that you can look at and you go, wait a minute, there's historical evidence, there's people talking about this through the time of Jesus. It's written down, and different things that are happening, and you start to go, not only do I believe it because of a number of other reasons, but I start to look at the text, and I look at the things that are going on, and I go, something happened here. There's very, very few scholars, Christian or non, that would say there was no Jesus. Right? There's something that he happened. He was in the mix, and you can Google and look at some of those things. Josephus and other people have talked about this Jesus guy. They're not coming from a Christian perspective. They're saying, there was this guy, Jesus. He gathered a crowd to him. He seemed to work miracles in some way. And his followers claimed that he was risen from the dead. Right? So there's that secular, they wouldn't use that word then, but secular backing that's in there. And there's a few things. As we look at the resurrection, we have this idea of the empty tomb. That the tomb was empty. Right? Because the Romans and the Jews of the time of Jesus did not like this idea of a resurrected Jesus. Right? It really made it hard for them to squash this rebellion. Right? The Romans, they want stability, because when you have stability, the taxes keep coming. Sound familiar? Right? Just enough stability keeps the money going, keeps the businesses going, keeps things going. And fringe cults of radicals don't help you do that. So you're trying to squash all these fires. The Jews in their time, they want religious purity. And this Jesus movement uproots all that. And it's so entwined. I mean, you read about the story of Paul, we're not going to get into that later. But he, as Saul, hates the Christians. And he's justified in murdering and chasing them down. That's the culture that comes just after Jesus' resurrection. Right? So, the empty tomb, a few of the cases against the empty tomb is that the Romans or the Jews stole the body. Right? They stole the body and because they were afraid of the Christians taking the body and doing something with it. If that was true, and you had this uprising group, wouldn't you just say, no, here's Jesus' body. Right? Here it is. He didn't rise from the dead. So the Romans and the Jews probably did not have the body. That one's pretty easy to wipe out. The other criticism against the resurrection is that the followers of Jesus stole the body. You actually see this in the New Testament text. Right? That they said, oh, they must have done this. Right? As a slander against the Christians. Now, here's the deal. The Romans would have guarded this tomb. We have that through the text. This tomb would have been sealed in a certain way that if that seal breaks, people in military guard or whatever would be punished. Right? So there's a lot of incentive for these military servicemen to keep this thing guarded. It has a large stone in the way, which could be moved, because it got moved into place. But it would take many people and probably tools and bars and poles and things to move this thing out of the way. If the Christians had attacked and taken the body of Jesus, it would have been known. It would have taken probably hundreds to attack the tomb, move the stone, steal the body, and everyone in the local area would have been like, oh yeah, that riot that happened last night, that was the Christians taking Jesus' body. Obviously, he didn't get resurrected. Right? So historically, that argument just kind of falls apart. Right? It's like how the feasibility of them attacking the tomb and stealing Jesus' body falls apart. The other part that is another attack against the resurrection is that, well, Jesus didn't really die. He just kind of fainted on the cross. Look, the Romans were really good at killing people. Right? That was like their thing. Right? Go back through history. They took over large parts of the known world, and they did it through fear. Right? You step out of line, we know how to take care of it. It's medically, a lot of folks who look through the crucifixion accounts in the Gospels and then the actual process of the historical documentation of crucifixion go, at the point where Jesus was at, you're done. Even if somehow he had fainted and they took the wound in his side, blood and water, and the torture he's going through, this is not something you return from. Even with the medicine and medical things that we have today. The Romans are really good at killing people. The Romans are really good at doing what they want to do. So you have this case of, did the Jews, the Romans steal the body? No. Did the Christians somehow do this? It would have been no. Was Jesus never died? Well, even if he never died, the Romans still have him, and they put him in the tomb, they would have killed him in there. The next evidence for the resurrection is that after the resurrection, Jesus appears to people around him, his followers. He appears to them. I was going to play a video. You can look this up on YouTube. Maybe I'll post it somewhere. Of kind of a mock story, if you will, the disciples getting together, and they're hanging around the fire, and one of them goes, Peter's like, hey, I got an idea, guys. This is what we're going to do. We're going to go, we're going to steal the body of Jesus. Right? We're going to somehow overcome the many guards there. Somehow we're going to move the stone. We're going to take his body, we're going to hide it, and then we're going to tell people he resurrected. And they're like, that's a great idea. We can keep this thing going. He's like, and you know what's going to happen after that? We're all going to be persecuted, chased down, murdered, tortured. It's going to be awesome. They all start like jumping around, and John's like, wait, hey guys, I think I missed a piece of the story. Like, do we get like really rich somehow? And he's like, no. You're all going to be poor now. You're going to live, you're going to be in hiding all the time. It's going to be terrible for us. And they're all cheering, yeah, this is going to be great, right? The logical approach of why would these people hide the body of Jesus, confess that, hey, this is what's going on, and then bear the punishment that came after this. There's something about their sacrifice that was given because they gained nothing. I have very unlikely that they saw what was happening in their little story breaking out into the world and seeing this thing happen. They sacrificed everything. People will lie to a point, but eventually, as the fallout goes generation to generation, person to person, it is hard to see that these people were making up a story. They were lying in some way. There are a few other kind of oppositions to the resurrection, but those are kind of the big ones. So maybe you're out, maybe you've never thought about this before, maybe you're like, I don't know about the resurrection. Historically, it's hard to go, man, something happened. Something big happened. These men and women who just previous in the text are all scared and I don't know. I mean, Peter says to a little girl that says, hey, where are you with Jesus? Like, I don't know, get away from me. I don't know what you're talking about. He's so afraid of this story. Now he is emboldened. He is giving his life to this. There's something that happened. The next evidence, if you will, for the resurrection of Christ is people today are still experiencing the presence of God. There's something that is still going on. It's as if Jesus is still at work in the world. In my story, I loosely grew up in the church, as we kind of shared some of this before, and kind of knew the story, knew the different parts. I knew about the lady with the tents to pay. That was kind of cool, whatever. And kind of knew some of these stories, but was kind of disconnected from the whole story. I thought, yeah, this is just something people do. It keeps people out of trouble. It's probably okay. It's pretty harmless. When I was about 16 or 17 years old, just had this need to go, there's got to be something more to this. Like, I'm missing something. It seems like others around me are a little more connected to what's going on. I started reading through the Gospels. In whatever it was, but we had this old family Bible that was like this big. That was tucked away, it was all covered in dust, right? King James, and there was like all these like really calligraphies, pages, and drawings that were all like Renaissance like type things. And I just thought, like, if God is really going to show me himself, like, he can't use one of those like cheap Bibles. Like this Bible is probably going to do it. I don't know. We were 16, right? And but I just remember reading through that by myself, and just reading through it. It was really kind of just a rough time in life. And I don't know what happened. I don't know what verse it was. I don't know where I was really kind of reading. But all of a sudden, there was this moment where I knew that Jesus was in the world, that he was near to me, and that he loved me dearly. And I know we were singing, Jesus, I love you, Jesus. I'm not a super emotional person. Get to know me a little bit, it takes a little bit to pull those out. It's really only the Jesus stuff that pricks that. It's probably why I stick around with him so much, because he's so needed there. But I just broke down crying. I know there's a creator of the world, and he's intimately involved in my life, and he loves me. And it was just like this moment. Finley, they took this liquid love, it just poured over me. I believe in that moment I experienced the resurrected Christ. That he is something that's coming, but it is something that is experienced in breaking into our present moment. So we have historical evidence, we have scriptural and outside the text for the resurrection. We have folks thousands of years later still experiencing the presence and power of Jesus, setting them free, bringing them hope, bringing them life. And as we kind of wrap this up, not only do we experience his presence here and now, but there is still, like Martha, which says, I know on that day of resurrection, on that last day, that God will bring that up. That is still coming. There is a day that is coming that God will set all things right. Right? Because as we know, like the transmission, we'll get it fixed. We'll figure it out. Right? The party went, it was great. Those weren't real problems. Right? But some of those real problems that happen in our lives, they don't get remedied. Jesus, in a way, we feel like he doesn't come through. There's still a holding on going there, but there will be a day, or that you make all things right. That you make all things new. In Christ's call in this I am the resurrection and the life, he's speaking to that place in every person that says, I know that things should be better. I know that things should be whole. It seems like things are off. Things are broken. It used to be together, and now it's not. He's saying, I am the resurrection and the life. Believe in me. And believe is not just a know in me. It is saying, I am putting my hope that all things will be made right in Christ. Here and now, I'm putting my hope in that. I'm structuring my life around the way of Jesus because he sets all things right. And the things of my own path, the things of selfishness and greed, things of self-ambition, those things will be set aside, and I'll take up the way of Christ and put my hope in this way. And in doing that, I will experience these moments where he breaks in now, and where I don't experience those things, I wait eagerly for his coming. We stand together. We're going to take communion. Elizabeth, want to play a little bit for us? We're going to take communion together. Communion is a practice that has been going on for a couple thousand years. I don't think we'd be doing this if there wasn't a resurrection. Right? Because if Jesus said, hey, do this in remembrance of me, and he died and he was gone, they'd probably remember him for a little while, just like you and I. We'll be remembered for a few years after we're gone. And eventually there will be a plaque on somebody's window. Well, I wonder what they were about. But Christ was remembered because he is still alive, he is still working. And as we share the bread and the wine, we are confessing that Christ was broken and Christ's blood was poured out, that he was killed. But in taking the life into us, we're saying that he is resurrected, he is alive, he is still giving life, he is still moving. That is the great expression that we are experiencing in communion. The way we do communion here is you come down the center aisle, you peel off to the back to cause less traffic jams, and this is open for anyone that would like to come. Anyone that says, I need resurrection life in my story to break in now. And I need to be reminded of the hope of what is coming. Form my life around Jesus. If you're not familiar with what's going on right now, this feels a little weird to you, just watch. See what's going on in the room, what's going on inside of you. But for those of us that would like to partake, I want you to start to come down the central aisle. And for me, this idea of Jesus being life, being the resurrection, being the hope that holds all things together, I'm excited I got this week. I'm excited that I got this week. The other ones were good, but this is why I follow Jesus. If it was just hey, you people are bad, Jesus died for you, say a prayer, someday you'll float on a cloud. That was the story, I would have given it up. It doesn't make sense. I take my chances. But when I see this story operate as a God who loves his creation. He loves what he has made, and he yearns to be in relationship. And he sees the brokenness of the world, and he goes, that's not how it's supposed to be. And I'm going to pour myself out to see it made right. And I call people to me, and I ask them to pour themselves out to make it right. I see Christ and his community, his church, redeeming and making whole, and making things the way he intended them to be. As we get a taste of that now, there's going to be a day where he comes and makes it all in his fullness. The idea of the resurrection of the life is that a deep, deep love the Father has for you. God has for you. Deep, deep love. He sees your pain. He sees your brokenness. He saw it in Martha, your brother who had died. He saw it. And he made a way to make it whole. So as you hold your elements, as you hold the bread, symbolizing the broken body of Christ, the blood, the poured out blood, the forgiveness of sins. This is the sacrifice, the way of Jesus to make all things whole. To put our trust in the Creator of the universe who sacrifices himself for us. As an example, as a precedent to defeat the power of sin. Defeat the power of death. The bread and the juice you're about